Hello, everybody. How are you? I hope you are doing well. I've got Dory here on the desk with me. She's going to make sure I say everything right. Is that right, Dory? Anyway, this is number 165. I'm going to start with a question from the comments. Someone was asking about lip tremor. So let me pull this up real quick. It says, hello, Mr. Lewis. Would you please do and post a video about an embouchure tremor and ways to go through this problem? Thank you in advance. Okay, so the problem, first off, is those words could mean anything. Oh, let me pull this down so I'm not looking up like that. Okay, those words could mean anything. If you have some sort of dystonia, I can't help you with that. Other than, and this would have to be an in-person type thing, I can help coach you through not the physical part of it, but coping with the being able to play even though that's happening. I've had one student that had he said it wasn't dystonia, but it was some other type of neurological thing, and if he pushed his thumb right here, it would make his jaw wobble. And so along those same lines, when he put the mouthpiece up, it would push on the jaw, and he would start getting that. And it sounded to me like a vibrato. And that's the thing, you know, and this is what I tried to persuade him of, is that if it does sound like a vibrato, and sometimes it sounded like an inappropriate vibrato, but still, there's famous people who have inappropriate vibratos, right? So I don't see a problem with having, if it's a physical problem that you isn't so bad that it doesn't stop you from playing the horn, but you have now this extra vibrato. I don't have a problem with that. He had a problem with it, and I think he eventually quit playing. I know that's not the kind of news people want to hear. But if it's the difference between playing and not playing, I think, well, you know what? I don't want to say what I would do or what I wouldn't do in the same situation. It just seems to me, if I want to play the horn, does it really matter if it's shaking or not? So that's the first thing, is I can't help you with that. That's not my expertise. I can't believe I just used that word. I hate that word. There, you know, when it comes to learning how to play trumpet, there's no such thing as expertise. I'm sorry. But that's a tangent. We can talk about that some other time. Now, so there are other kinds of tremors. And I have a student right now, and I won't mention his name because, you know, I'm sure he wouldn't appreciate me using him as an example. But it's weird because sometimes he has this and sometimes he doesn't. And this is not a medical issue. There are times when he going from one note to the next, and it's hard for me to imitate this stuff sometimes. Right, and the whole system is shaking, and I'm convinced at this point that that is not a physical problem, but a trumpet problem. You know, the way we think, we want to take let's call it a deliberacy problem, being more deliberate. When we take a breath, we want the breath to be metered and controlled. A nice, so we okay. I'm kind of stuttering a little bit today. I apologize for that. Before we play, we want to make sure that we're breathing in the context of the rhythm that we're about to play. If the song is here, we want to breathe in rhythm. If you have to breathe 2 beats, you breathe 2 beats. If it's 4 beats, you breathe 4 beats, but it should be in rhythm. You should feel the rhythm before you play. Right? We want to have that. That's the first step. Hello, Mr. Johnson. He says, good evening, everyone. So yes, the very first step is to have a good start. Have a clean slate in your mind before you start. Take that breath, a very deliberate breath, not you know that story, that saying that some of the trumpet players say. They say, sometimes the trumpet wins, sometimes you win. And it's true. That does happen. I don't think we need to let that happen. And one of the first steps towards not letting that happen is being in control from the moment you start to breathe. A lot of people, they just take a breath. Like, oh, there's a piece of music. Whoa. Like they're surprised. What? I'm supposed to play music? Right? That kind of thing. That's not going to help. You take your breath in time. It can be 1 beat, it can be 2 beats, it can be 4 beats, but you take it in time according to the context of the music. Then, the other part of this is that you should know what you're going to play before you play. You know where you're going to start, you know where you're going to stop. And that's a very important part too. Now, what's this got to do with the shaking? I believe that if it's not a medical issue, I believe that the more mental issue with the shaking embouchure has to do with cross signals in the mind. Hello, Gabriel. I believe it has to do with cross signals from the brain going to the body. If you have contrary signals, then you're going to have contrary messages going to the periphery, and that's when the shaking starts happening. You know, if I hadn't experienced this myself, I wouldn't be able to answer it. But I have experienced this before. And so there's a mistake sometimes that we make, that we assume other people have the same mistakes as we do because of the same problems, and that the same fix will fix it. That said, every time I've had students with this kind of thinking is what got rid of it. So Basically, what we're talking about is slowing down the process. Slow down the music, slow down the process. Everything needs to be more deliberate. If you're going to play a scale and you're having trouble with the the embouchure shaking, then it starts with the first breath. You take a very deliberate timed breath. You slow all of this down. You slow the process down, you slow the music down. What do I mean by slowing down the process? You give yourself more time between exercises. You do more repetitions. You spend more time thinking than you do playing. That whole look before you leap thing. So, this is a very general roundabout way of answering the question. I'm going to read the question one more time, post a video about an embouchure tremor and ways to overcome, go through this problem. Now, once again, I'm going to say it one more time. I'm going to say this one more time. If it's a medical issue, I can't help other than to say that to give advice about how to continue practicing under those conditions. Because I do think if you want to keep playing the horn, I do think you should keep practicing, which is kind of weird for me to say that, right? Because I'm one of those guys that believes there's a lot of situations where you should just not practice. I believe in not practicing quite often if it's the right reason. And I know that's a very controversial thing. But if you're going through something like that and it is medical, and you want to be able to play the horn, because you don't know what's on the other side of that medical issue. So in that situation, it's best to hit it head on, in my opinion, with an attitude of trial and error. See what works, see what doesn't work. Now, fortunately, the advice I'm giving for people who are having that issue for non-medical reasons, I would start there. Really, I would start there. Slow the breath down, slow the and how about this one? Because this is something I've just now started experimenting with. Breathing through your nose, not through your mouth. So you take a nice 4-beat breath through your nose. Play the note. We want to, and you know what? Here's what I don't like, because it might say you might take everything that I told you about the non-medical tremors. You might take what I just said and say, well, what you're basically saying is just relax. No, I'm not saying that. There's people, that's how they think, just relax. What, that's what that means. That's not what that means. I was very specific. I didn't say just relax. I said take a slower, more deliberate breath. Play your music slower. When you're practicing, make the process of practicing take longer. Be patient. Be deliberate. Every time you play your horn, know in the music where you're going to start and where you're going to stop. Don't stop no matter what happens in between the two. What's interesting is I just wrote all this stuff in a what do you call it? A book for beginners. And in fact, hey, now that I'm thinking about this, if you're experiencing issues with tremor like that, I hate to use this to plug a book, but let's do that. My new book, it came out earlier this year. It's called Trumpet Pioneer Tonalization Studies. Now, this is a book originally meant for beginners. And I have a video with an intro. Actually, I have 3 videos. And they're all 3 coming up. If you type in Google, in fact, I'll take the Google search right here and I'll put it in. There's a Google search that I just put. And the videos for this come up at the top. What else comes up at the top? Sheet Music Plus. And then my store is second. Sheet Music Direct. So the book is listed, if you do there, the book is listed at the very top. Videos, places where you can buy the book, my website, all of that. I talk about this, what we're talking about here, how to get rid of the tremor. Assuming it is not a medical condition. If it's a medical condition, you can still use this. I think it will still help. But what we want to do is apply all that stuff I talk about at the beginning of the book about the proper way to practice. That's what we want to do. So, and if you are struggling with a tremor, and I didn't think to do this as an ad for the book, but the book has a lot of applications, even though it's for beginners. I even mentioned in there that on one of the videos, I mentioned that I would probably use this for a comeback player if I got the comeback player soon enough in that comeback process. If the comeback player has been playing 2 years, I don't think I would do that. But if I have a comeback player, I would probably make them go through this Trumpet Pioneer book because I have it laid out in this way and the description that I was just telling you. If you follow all the instructions on that, it should go a long way towards helping folks. Because okay, let's talk about that. I know I keep interrupting myself. I was doing so much better at that, and now today it's out the window. I start a sentence, then I interrupt myself with my own interruption. So let's see if I can do better at that. So what I'm talking about is when we have non-physical, more mental problems with the tremor that you're talking about. It's not medical, it's mental. I believe the way you get rid of that mental tremor is by increasing your focus. And basically, what I talk about in that beginning of that book is how to focus. What to do to focus. Because, someone says, focus, man, focus, focus. And that doesn't help. I've been one of those people that people have screamed at me and said, focus, focus, focus. What does that mean? And in that Trumpet Pioneer book, not only do I put the exercises in a very specific order, but I have text at the beginning of the book that says, when you do these exercises, be careful. Okay, careful is careful, but not fearful, right? Careful, in other words, make sure you're playing the right notes, but don't be afraid to make mistakes because that fear can also cause tremors too. Be careful, be deliberate, go slow. that kind of thing. And when you combine that that attitude with the exercises that are in the book, those exercises for someone that is going through something like a comeback or dealing with some physical issues but that are not medical, that book works wonderful for that stuff. I had a student that kept asking me, because usually with the expansion studies, we say, okay, do the expansion studies, then you don't ever have to do them again. He keeps saying, is it okay for me to do the expansion studies still? I want to keep doing them. I love the way they are. And then later, another student started saying, I want to still do the expansion studies. So, yes, you can still do the expansion studies. You don't have to be a beginner to have benefit from those exercises doing them that way. But if you don't have the focus, that's not going to help. Anyway, let's move on to the next question. I went long on that. Gabrielle says, Eddie, I asked last time about the issue I have with the switch from B flat to C. I usually do it at the end of the session, and I change mouthpiece using a little one because I like more of the sound, but I struggle with higher notes. Is there anything I do wrong? You told me not to change mouthpiece, but I don't like how the C plays with the B flat. Well, I do tell people that if you're going to make a choice, you should choose, talking about equipment, you should choose the equipment that gives you the sound that you like. So if, according to what you're saying there, I'm going to say then if you like the sound better, then I would stick to that. I'm not a big fan of changing rim sizes. As I said before, there's some people that have no problem with that. I'm not a big fan of that. I have difficulty with that. It causes problems in my performance. I mean, I tell people I don't have bad days on the horn. That doesn't mean I don't have bad performances. If I switch rim sizes in the middle of the gig, that gig is pretty much toast as far as I'm concerned. That gig is goners. And I've figured out that it's because of the rim size. I want the same rim on every mouthpiece. So that's the problem I have. So if you want to switch mouthpieces from the B flat to the C, better to keep the same rim and change the cup than it is to have an entirely different mouthpiece. That's one of the reasons why I sell the Warburton mouthpieces now. I think I told you guys that I have this kit, and I went through with a student. Now he prefers the deep. He prefers the deep V cup, but he struggles with the accuracy up above the staff. And so we did some sizing, and we figured out the equivalent mouthpiece that would have a shallower cup. It's not real shallow. He went with an M cup. M in Warburton, I believe, is a medium V cup. They advertise it as a commercial cup, but when people say stuff like that, oh, this is classical, this is jazz, this is commercial, that's just hogwash. That's not how this stuff works. I don't agree with them on that. Um, if you get a sound that you like, it doesn't matter that it's a commercial mouthpiece. Okay. So anyway, and so I told him, hey, he doesn't have, he likes the sound of the deeper cup, and that's what he's going to play on. And I told him, you don't have to switch any mouthpiece at all. This is what but he said, if I ever have to play with a big band again, he wants to have that brighter sound and the more accuracy on the higher notes. So he's going to go ahead and order the mouthpiece. But yeah, it's why am I telling you that? Oh, but we want to have, this is the thing, is we want to have the same rim so that we don't have these weird things happen. Gabriel says it's just from a 13 to 11, but I don't know why the smaller has a better tone on the C trumpet. Unfortunately, I can't change the cup only. My mouthpieces are Yamaha, by the way. Yeah. Hello, Jeffrey. So, okay, so you know what? We talk about that third world problems, first world problems. I forget how they say that, right? In our modern age, when we have the option to try all these different mouthpieces, it's actually not how things used to be, right? In the old days, people used whatever they could get their hands on. You didn't, have the luxury. Even when I was younger, we didn't have the luxury of all these different, literally hundreds of different size combinations, literally hundreds of different combinations. So there is the other side of that. Now, if let's say that not getting a different cup is not an option, then I would say stick to the mouthpieces that you're using and then start changing the way you practice. For example, you say that you switch later. Why not on some days play the C trumpet first? Am I getting this backwards? Switch from B flat to C. Yeah, why not go the other direction? Not necessarily because that will fix the problem, but because it might bring some issues to the surface. It might help you solve the problem. There might be things about your mouthpieces or the way you're playing the different horns. There might be things that you haven't put your finger on yet. So you want to switch those things around. That's what I would do. If the mouthpieces are not, if you can't change the mouthpieces, if the mouthpieces are set, then what you want to do is change the way you practice. Don't wait to the end of your practice time to do that C trumpet work. Something else that you can look into. I'm not a big Gabriel says, so can I start the practice session with a C instead of the B flat? Absolutely. I'm not one of those. Why do we do the B flat first? That's because traditionally that's what people have done. That doesn't mean you have to stick to that. All of the orchestra guys that play C trumpet, they all warm up on their B flats. Well, at least, okay, I shouldn't say all. You know what? Times have changed. Back in the 80s and the 90s, when I was trying to become a orchestral trumpet player, the people I was exposed to, that's what all of them told me. You warm up on the B flat, you play the rest of the day on the C trumpet. That might be old information now. So yeah, that's what I would do, is start experimenting. Oh, there was something I was about to say. I'm not a big fan of looking for problems like this, but you might want to check and see, uh, check the gap on the C trumpet to make sure it's okay, because that can be an issue. Gabriel says, can I do C trumpet in the morning and B flat in the afternoon? That's what I'm telling you. Experiment and try all of these different combinations. Do that and a bunch of other things too. And let me be clear about this. We're not looking for what works best. We're looking for issues to come to the surface. For example, if you do it this way, are you still having the same problems? If you're not having the same problems, that raises a whole different question, right? If by changing the order of when you practice which instrument, those problems go away, then it's clearly a mental problem, not a physical problem. It has nothing to do with the mouthpiece. If the problems persist, no matter how much you shift things around in your practice time, I'm not saying it's that you need to get a mouthpiece, but you most certainly want to look at why that's happening. So you might want to look at the gap. You might want to look at different aspects, and also with the practicing. So he says, Gabriel says, when I struggle with high notes, I mean in the range of E to G above the staff. So that's, yeah. That information kind of helps a little bit. Tell me again what your C trumpet is. What kind of C trumpet? There are some horns that just play badly up there. An example of an instrument that does badly is my Yamaha flugelhorn. Now that might it's handmade German rotary trumpet or B flat. So I'm talking about the C trumpet. Or which one are you having trouble with? Which one has the range issues? The C. Oh, I see. The rotary trumpet is a C trumpet. Okay, so yeah, sometimes horns can be funny up above high C. Oh, I see. I see. So they're both rotary. Wow, I'd love to hear that. I would love to hear that. Now keep in mind that as you go higher, that the partials get closer, right? And that's going to be a little bit different on the C trumpet. You cannot blow the C trumpet the same way you blow the B flat. You cannot, because all of the ratios have diminished just a little bit. I know that sounds weird. So what am I saying? So the tubing on the open note So if you play C concert in the upper register, I'm trying to think of the maths here, right? The tubing on, once you get past high C, check this out. Once you get past high C, the tubing is tubing that you would never touch on the B flat trumpet because it doesn't have that tubing. The rest of the horn is not like that. So you could say that the tubing for B flat concert, B flat on the C is the same as to the tubing for open on the B flat. The tubing for B natural on the C is the same thing as A on the B flat. I hope I'm not getting that backwards. Anyway, so the point is that the tubing, that's new tubing there, and you're crunching down in the harmonics on harmonics you've never played before up there. It's not the same. The horn does not blow the same up there. You cannot say, well, it's a just the trumpet, and that's how trumpet works. It doesn't work like that because the harmonics don't line up. It's different harmonics. So the natural tuning of the notes, I might have it backwards, but regardless of whether I have it backwards or not, the principle is the same. No, I had it right. I had it right. So because the tuning of the open position is the equivalent of one valve down on the B flat trumpet, on C trumpet. I had it right. Now I got it wrong. So C is one fingering, right? So the second valve and open in the upper register are fingerings that the length of tubing is length of tubing you do not have on the B flat trumpet. Those are two new fingerings in terms of what it does to your ear. So when you practice up there, you need to this all goes back to what we're talking about with the familiarity. You need to be familiar with those partials on that horn. It's not the same. You could play the exact same note. It's not the same. So you have to get used to that. And yes, maybe one of the ways to get used to it is switch and do the C first. I don't have a problem with that. The only reason in the past I never practiced on a C trumpet is because my C trumpets always sounded terrible. I never had a good C trumpet. If you have a great B flat, you dread going to the C trumpet. And that's why today I don't have a C trumpet, because the only C trumpet I ever had that sounded as good as my B flat, not ever had, ever played on. The only C trumpet I ever played on that sounds as good as my B flat is the Blackburn. And I'll probably never have a Blackburn. I don't make enough money to get a Blackburn. So I think they're like right now $5,000 or $6,000, $5,000 or $6,000 to get one of those horns. So yes, the chances are, and it's sort of like a catch-22 situation. I don't get enough gigs to justify that kind of expense, but the reason I don't get those gigs is probably partly because I don't have a C trumpet. So I don't. But I also know that because of reputation, I also know that I probably never will get those gigs now at this point in my career. Yeah, so Gabriel says the C roadies are terribly expensive too. So anyway, that's what I would do is experiment with different amounts of time on the different instruments. Now that you said that it's in the above high C, so are you saying E above the staff or E to G above the staff? That's still what I'm saying, still kind of sort of applies with that. Anyway, any other questions? I'm kind of on slow go today. My mind isn't what it normally is. I'm very sleepy. Yeah, I'll tell you guys what's happened. I've greatly reduced my coffee intake, and now I'm sluggish. My mind is sluggish. So I've been this way all week. Any other questions? Gabriel says, and the opposite trouble when I make lip slurs in the Chops Pro, I struggle with pedals. Oh, wow. How cool is that? That's funny. Okay, but that could also be the rim size too. Jeffrey put a coffee on there and one of those Easter Island figures. Yeah. Any other questions? Oh, excuse me. Ooh. So I think I gave you guys the news last week. We've got the Trumpet Chops Master Book has been published. It will take literally at least a month or two to get onto Amazon. It is available on it's available on Lulu. Reverend Robert Harris. Hello, nice to see you. He says, how do you keep your top lip from sliding to the top of the mouthpiece? Sliding on the top of the mouthpiece. Now, what you want to do is make sure that you're up over that edge, right? So the orbicularis oris is the muscle that goes around. So that's when the orbicularis is. We have an orbicularis here. We got an orbicularis here. We got orbicularis here. It's a circular muscle that comes in. We have others that I won't talk about. But yes, the orbicularis oris is a little thicker, and the lip tissue there is a little thicker. So we want the inside edge of the mouthpiece to be up over. We talk about people who play in the pink. If you play in the pink, it will always slide down. If the edge of the mouthpiece is over the pink, it will have a tendency to slide down. That said, I do have students that play that way, and they do okay. It will only ever be okay. If you don't want it to slide down, you want to get up over the edge of it, so if it does slide, it slides the other way. That does, of course, bring with it some other problems. So, because then you start pinching the notes a little bit, stuff like that. But yes, that's the biggest thing, is to make sure that the top of the mouthpiece is up far enough. Let me show you where my mouthpiece placement is. In fact, I'll do with the mouthpiece first, and then I will go grab a visualizer. Okay, so That's where the placement is. I've got the inner rim is going up over the edge. I'll go get the visualizer so you can see. Well, I guess my visualizer is missing. Let's use this. This is for cleaning the trumpet. Don't look at the, because this is too big, right? Don't look at the bottom. Look at where I'm putting it in the top. That's my embouchure placement. Okay? We don't want it down here. If it's down here, it will continue to slide down because it's on the other side of the hump. Okay? Reverend Harris says, so keep the top lip inside the rim of the mouthpiece. That's what I'm saying. That's correct. So I'll show you one more time. Now, there are times when people look like, this is why I usually have a visualizer. I'm going to have to organize my drawers because I don't see it up there. I do keep a visualizer so we can do this. I'll get the student to put it on. I get them to buzz. You have to make them buzz, by the way, because if they don't buzz, they could be putting it anywhere, right? I have to make them buzz. And when they buzz, right, I can see where it's really going. And I can actually compare that to what it looks like on the outside. But sometimes they look like it's down, but when you look at the buzz, it's actually in the right position. So that's why I have the visualizer, because you cannot go by what it looks like on the outside. The visualizer kind of sort of looks like this, but it's got like a mouthpiece rim on the end of it instead of this circular thing. And it's a little upsetting that mine's not in that drawer. Gabriel says, what about the flugel? Shall I practice exercises too, or it's just for music? Let me ask you this. How often do you play the flugelhorn in public? I think if you're going to not play it in public, then you need to spend some time on it. I don't spend a lot of time on my flugelhorn, but I play it on almost every gig. I take it to every gig. And if anything comes, Mr. Harris, Reverend Harris says, my visualizer fits better or feels better than my actual mouthpiece. So that's when you're ready for a different mouthpiece, in my opinion. If your visualizer, those visualizers tend to be small, I think. Anyway, so talking about the flugelhorn, yeah, so I think if you're not playing it very often on the gigs, on the performances, then you should probably spend maybe 15, 30 minutes a week on the flugelhorn, roughly. But yes, you should be acquainted with it. I don't spend a lot of time on the flugel. Now, let me talk about, so looking at the same way, about the piccolo trumpet. My piccolo trumpet gets used uh, so infrequently that when I pull it out, I have to pound the valves to make them work. My piccolo trumpet is underneath right here. See that? There's a shelf there and then a shelf behind it. It's down underneath. You can kind of see it through here. I'm trying to move my finger. Right in this area, you can kind of see it. Yeah, so I don't ever practice on the piccolo trumpet. That sounds crazy, right? I've never really needed to practice on the piccolo trumpet. I practice everything that I'm going to play on the piccolo trumpet. I practice on the B flat trumpet. And then before a performance, I'll switch. And I've never had a problem with that approach. And there was a time, I don't do a lot of piccolo stuff now, but there was a time when I was playing a lot of weddings. I was playing brass quintet stuff and stuff like that. Never had trouble uh, for not practicing the piccolo trumpet. I've heard people say they've got to practice every instrument every day. I think that's ridiculous. I really do. I don't think, I don't know why anybody would do that. Gabriel says, so when I play Neruda concerto or hum with the E flat, I better train some time with it before doing the music. That's right. So I'm not saying don't ever touch that horn. I just like working the stuff up. So like when I actually learn the piece, I'm learning it the uh, on the B flat trumpet first. Can I make chops pro with the E flat trumpet? You can do that. Yeah, you can do that. I don't have a problem with that too. You know, when you do it, you can put some time into it. Okay, Reverend Harris says, "Thank you, appreciate your expertise. How do you teach a left-handed trumpeter to reduce mouthpiece pressure using right-handed trumpets?" Um, wow, that's never come up before. Left-handed trumpet player to reduce. Well, that's an interesting thing to think about. Yeah, I don't want to sound like I know what I'm talking about. I don't know that anyone's ever had extra pressure for that reason. You know, I do have an approach for working on mouthpiece pressure. I don't think mouthpiece pressure is. I think that the way traditionally that we've approached that is way off. I think it's the same thing, and I know this sounds controversial, and I shouldn't even be saying it on a trumpet uh, YouTube channel, but I think the way people look at blood pressure, you know, blood pressure, I understand blood pressure is a problem. I'm not saying it's not a problem, but I don't think it's the problem. I think usually blood pressure is a sign of a different problem. And the fact that they don't look for what that problem is, I think, is one of the problems with our um, our health industry today. Is they don't look for the problem. They don't do anything to find, hey, what's causing this higher blood pressure? They just give you a pill to bring down the blood pressure. That's not fixing the problem. I see mouthpiece pressure exactly the same way. I'm not going to make you, if you're my student, we're not getting rid of the mouthpiece pressure. What we're doing is making sure that certain, like for example, when you do have mouthpiece pressure problem, we're going to make sure that you're doing one of my routines. Why is that? Well, the order of the routine has the exercises set up in a way that you're encouraging your most natural embouchure. That's one of the first things we're going to do is make sure you're reaching towards your most natural embouchure. And when you do the exercises, now the order, I call it the physical trumpet pyramid order. The pyramid communicates hierarchy based on foundations, right? So you have that lowest foundation of air, embouchure, flexibility, and each one is resting on the previous one, and that determines what order we're going to do the exercises in. So if you do any of my routines, and that includes the Daily Routines book, the Chops Express book, or any of the Chops books, I have a series of books called Trumpet Chops. There's Trumpet Chops Tyro, Trumpet Chops Player, Trumpet Chops Apprentice, Trumpet Chops Pro, and now we just released last week Trumpet Chops Master. We've got 2 more of these books to release. All of these routine books follow the same physical trumpet pyramid structure. All of them. That's my first step when I'm helping somebody with mouthpiece pressure, is to get them on track with that as a daily routine. When you do those exercises, those types of exercises in that order, it encourages a more natural embouchure, as opposed to people that say, oh, I'm going to try this embouchure, I'm going to try that embouchure. Your most natural embouchure isn't somebody else's natural embouchure. So you don't try the Castello embouchure. You don't try the Farkas embouchure. The people that talk this way, that's how they talk about this. Oh, I'm doing a Farkas embouchure. There is no Farkas embouchure. There is no Castello embouchure. There is only your embouchure. And so those, to me, the first step towards reducing mouthpiece pressure is to get those exercises going in that order. I just started a new student who said he was doing, because I encouraged this, right? He was doing exercises out of the Arvin book, but in that order, and he was getting benefit. He said he was getting benefit, but when he started taking lessons with me, I gave him the appropriate routines for his level. And the first thing he told me in the next lesson, he says, this makes it so much easier to do that order, to do that system. So once again, I'm not trying to plug my books. That's never what this is about. But the books make it easier. You can watch the videos, you can figure the stuff out on your own. The books just make it easier to implement. I don't think there's anything I keep secret at all. There are some things I don't do with the people online because that's reserved for the students, but it's not secret stuff. So I don't have any trade secrets that aren't here on the videos. And so that's, like I said, the following the physical trumpet pyramid order is the first step. Then, believe it or not, the same thing as I was talking about at the beginning of this Q and A, this thing with the being more focused, and by being more focused, we're looking at the breath, a more deliberate breath. We're looking at playing more deliberately. We're looking at being more careful, slowing the process down, slowing the music down, being careful about what you play before you play, but without being afraid. When you combine that stuff with the physical trumpet pyramid or my scale expansion studies or any of that stuff, it's going to make the mouthpiece pressure go away, because you don't have, in the beginning of the Q and A, we were talking about lip tremors. Mouthpiece pressure is going to be the same solution. There are other things. I actually have a video about this. Let me find it real quick. I don't actually like this video. After it was done, I thought, there was, oops, that's not it. After it was done, I thought, there were some things that I left out. It wasn't left out on purpose. Like I said, I don't hide stuff. So here's a video I'm putting in the chat where I talk about how to reduce mouthpiece pressure. I would say that works whether or not you're left-handed or right-handed. Anyway, so we're out of time. Thanks for joining me. Always great to hang out with you guys. We'll see you next time. I don't think we will have, next week is Good Friday, and I have a concert. And yeah, a concert on Good Friday. I almost turned it down. I shouldn't be. That's one of the things, we don't do Good Friday in America anymore. So, but I took a gig, and so we won't have Q and A next week. We'll have the Q and A maybe the week after. Okay. So that said, happy Palm Sunday, happy Easter, and we'll see you guys next time. God bless you. Have a great weekend and great Holy Week. Okay. Bye.